How about this? Whether you're in the boardroom or the break room or maybe just at the dinner table or anywhere else that us humans interact, the same patterns of conflict, well, they play out repeatedly. We know that. Author Gabe Karp wants to help you understand and avoid some of these conflicts. He has a new book out. It's called Don't Get Mad at Penguins. Dave, good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you as well.
All right off the top, explain the title, Don't Get Mad at Penguins. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a catchy title, by the way. Just here's my shameless plug. But the best way to think about it as a saying is that between expectation and reality is a space filled with suffering and conflict. And the wider that space becomes, the greater our suffering is. And the penguin analogy is really a lesson in acceptance, that we should accept people's limitations and don't expect them to do things they're not capable of, even though we may really want them to. And the challenge is that it's often hard to see someone's limitations, especially if everything else we know about them suggests that they're not limited. So take a penguin, for example. What do you mean a penguin can't fly? It's a bird. It's got wings. It's got feathers. And birds with wings and feathers can fly, except that they can't. And we can choose to get mad at that, or we can accept it.
Whew, okay, but that forces a person to take a lot of responsibility for themselves and their own reactions, and that's another part of the equation, Dave.
Yes, it definitely does. You know, there's a fair amount of personal responsibility here, and we oftentimes find ourselves dealing with someone who's continually falling short of our expectations, and how we react to that, how we feel about that, is entirely within our control.
I'm captivated by this, and I want to make sure that we have time to get to some real help for people. So as a trial lawyer, your experience there, have you seen that maybe most of these conflicts are easily resolved if people just have better communication skills? And how can we, what's at least one or two things that we can do today to make us better with our teams?
Sure. Communication is key. In the book, we talk about something called the bully trap. And sometimes we communicate in a way that is perceived by the other person as us being a bully. And that shuts communication down. That gets people defensive. So one way to combat the bully trap is to use what I call a shopping list voice. So let's say something happens and I'm really mad, and I go and I yell at someone because they screwed something up at work. Like, hey, I just got the phone with the client. They said you screwed this up and that up, and I go on this tirade. Yeah. Well, that's not helpful. But a shopping list voice, if you say to me, I'm going to the store, you want me to pick anything up? And I say, yeah, could you get me some eggs, milk, sugar, coffee, and sprinkles? I want to make a cake. Yeah. Shopping list. So same thing, like, I just got off the phone with a client, and they said you made a mistake, and they had to redo all your work, and it caused a really big problem. So when you can at least have a conversation where you can deliver harsh feedback or messaging in a calm voice, that changes the dynamic. That prevents the other person from their survival instinct kicking in and them not listening to you or getting defensive and trying to yell back. We are going to have you back, even if I just call you up and lay on the couch and just talk to you on speakerphone. Quickly, what do you say of apologizing or owning a situation? And I'll just be honest, I had a conversation today where I was talking to a good friend and expressing how I felt, and I did forget at the beginning of the conversation to first own my part in it. So I went back and said, hey, I started out talking about you, but I should have started with me. Is that the right way to do it? So you're ahead of the... Yeah, you're ahead of the game. I mean, to stop midstream and then go back and fix that.
Well, it was after, perfect. But I get it. Sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. I know.
All right. Okay. No, hey, but the other thing is, it's never too late. It's just never too late. And apologies, you know, one of the key things about an apology is that the person you're apologizing to, exactly what it was that you've done and how it has affected them and hurt them. And people screw up the apology when they say things like, well, I'm sorry if you were offended by what I did.
Right.
Well, that's not much. You know, I didn't do anything wrong, but if you're offended by it, I'm sorry. That's not an apology. That's not taking ownership of it.
Yeah. Are you a therapist too? Because I'm just saying.
No.
I learned something I didn't realize I was doing. I started out the apology with how I didn't mean it. You know, those weren't my intentions and they should have known, you know, and so it's a real lesson for everyone to just stop and just say, I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, Gabe. Great to see you. Don't Get Mad at Penguins is your book, and we will post more on fox2detroit.com. Quick break. We'll be right back.
911, what's your emergency?
I just saw